Hey guys, my gamer tag is GammaSoul, and I'm here to give you an easy to understand guide to macro decisions in the top lane. The problem I found with macro guides on YouTube today is that they're very vague and unclear when it comes to how to make decisions in the mid to late game. So I wanted to make a super easy to understand guide on how you can make macro decisions as a top laner. Something that I want you guys to notice is that I'm calling it macro decisions and not just macro. That's because the first thing you should understand is that League is about making a ton of micro and macro decisions. That means at any given time in the game, you are making a decision to do something. You know, in a macro sense, that may be the decision to pressure a lane or split push or freeze or, look for a pick. I like to call that sitting in a bush and doing nothing, right? So there are a million different decisions you can make in League of Legends, and I'm here to make that decision making process super simple in that you should only be making a few decisions and ignoring a lot of the noise that happens in a typical League game. And I'm only here to talk about the mid to late game. While I believe laning is important, things such as wave management and how the state of the wave should help you make decisions, there are a lot of great guys out there that can explain wave management. And what I'm going to be more focused on is what do you do after the tier 1 tower is gone, right? So what should you be doing? Should you be at the dragon fight? Should you be split pushing? Should you be grouping for a team fight? A common problem I see with a lot of low level players is that they sit in the jungle for the entire game. They either destroy a tower or get theirs destroyed, and then they roam in between lanes and get incredibly lost. They've lost all focus on the game. Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever ended a lane and started roaming aimlessly, or grouped for a dragon or any objective and stay grouped for way too long? Sometimes you're just A-ramming at that point, right? Well, here's the answer that you've all been waiting for. You should be in a lane 80% of the time. The only question you should ever ask yourself every time you go back to Fountain is, what lane should I go to? What lane should I be in right now? Well, there are only two things to consider when deciding to go into a lane. Those two things are, is the lane empty, and is the lane safe? Look at the lane and see, are there any allies occupying this lane? If not, sweet, the lane's empty, go at it, right? Well, what if multiple lanes are empty? What if you see top and bot are both empty? What are you going to do? Well, this is where League becomes an art. And this is where you can decide based on the state of the game how you want to play your game. And this is how you like your own unique expression of the game, right? You may take the lane that's closest to you. You may take the lane that's getting pressured the most. You know, your minions are at your tower and you really want to go catch that, right? Maybe you want to go to the empty lane with the most minions, right? You get to decide. This is where you can explore your options and make different decisions that will affect the game differently. Now, for the second thing, is the lane safe? Is the enemy stronger than me? How likely am I to die in this lane? So, what do you do when the lanes aren't safe? Well, you have to explore more options at that point. You could ward around your jungle. You know, maybe it's a really close game, and what could tip the balance is a jungle gank. You could ward, right? Maybe you're being super pressed, or the enemy's freezing at their tower. Well, you can eat your jungle. You can eat the enemy jungle, right? You can go gank enemy lanes, but what's most important is that you're always looking for an empty and safe lane, always. It should always be in the back of your mind. You shouldn't be in your jungle or in the enemy jungle if your lane is getting pushed, right? You don't want to give the enemy an empty lane, okay? Did your top laner win top and roam bot? Well, here's a test. Do you TP to the fight, or do you farm your safe and empty lane? Now, there are scenarios where you may want to TP. So let's imagine how your TP could go, right? You could turn the tides, win the team fight, and get a tower and dragon for it. You could, TP and it could scare them off and absolutely nothing happens. And now you're just splitting a lane between 3 to 5 people, right? Or you could get completely wiped, you get no golden EXP, and you just funneled your enemy team with gold and EXP, right? Those are the scenarios that could happen if you TP to, or try to contest, or react to your enemy, right? Now, let's imagine the scenario where you chose to push out the empty and safe lane, free and empty lane, right? Like, you get uncontested gold and EXP, you're applying pressure in a lane and maybe even get a free tower for it, right? Your team loses there's an example where your team loses the fight bot and you lose a tower and a dragon because you didn't TP, right? So every decision comes with pros and cons. The point I'm trying to make is that farming the safe empty lane is never the wrong answer, because even in the worst scenario, you're applying pressure in another lane that the enemy isn't responding to. So now you might be asking, okay, cool, now we know that we have to be in lane and how to lane. How do we know when should we be fighting for Dragon or Herald in the mid game, right? Well, good question. Let's talk about big objectives like Dragon, Herald, and Baron, right? So this is where teleport is actually incredibly important to top laners and why it's still being used after the changes. Teleport gives top a get out of free jail card. It opens up decisions for top that would otherwise be fully loaded commitments. For example, there are two approaches to these large objectives. First, the most common approach you see is that you can push a lane and TP to the fight, right? You've seen it. Your bot lane's getting pushed in right before the Baron's about to spawn. So you send the guy with TP to go handle it, right? But another strong decision to consider is you could run to the Dragon or Baron fight and TP to a lane after the fight is decided, right? So let's say like you're in a 5v5 team fight and you just won. Okay, great. You just won, you got Baron, and now you have the entire enemy's team is dead, 3 empty lanes, you have TP, like you can instantly make a snap decision and put pressure into a lane immediately with that Baron buff. Or your team loses the team fight and you lose the TP, well, maybe you can TP bot, right? And then you can get a tier 2 tower while everybody's still trying to recuperate from they're still getting the Baron and they're still trying to go back for a buy, right? You can exploit these little windows with TP. Okay, well, let's say you don't have TP and you took Ignite, right? Well, Ignite is definitely stronger in lane and in team fights over TP, always. But the thing that Ignite takes away is now you have to fully commit. Do I want to go to Dragon or do I want to go to lane? You can't have the best of both worlds like when you have TP. You have to make one decision and commit to that decision. You can't go flippy-flop to one or the other. Ignite can be good for lower elos because you should be more confident in your decision making. You know that winning any fight in lane or team fights will snowball in your favor. Anyways, thanks for listening to my easy to understand macro guide for top laners. Good luck in all your games, and remember, stay in lane.